Hey friends, it's me, Just Tamika. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free. Did I say that? Yes, you heard it. It's free. And there are many creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. So there's no need to rush out and buy any unnecessary equipment. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many others. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Yes, you heard me. No minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. So go ahead and download the Anchor app today. Go to anchor.fm to get started. And can't wait to hear your first podcast. Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Just Tamika. We're getting back on track. Sorry that I missed you all in June, but I am back and ready to work. I have here with me today my dear friend and colleague Janet Ruiz, also a therapist, and we're going to be answering some questions today. In fact, we came across an article on 11 questions that you've always wanted to answer your shrink. And so we're going to go from there.
Let's do it.
All right, the first question. We're also doing this blind, so we're not looking at the questions until we get to it. Okay, so the first question is, what do I talk about? That's a good question. So when someone comes to therapy, I think back to my first therapy appointment. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to talk about. I just thought about, like, I'm sitting in front of this person who has this notepad, and what are they writing about me?
Same.
So when people ask me, like, oh, well, honestly, I think I tend to guide people when we first meet. I'll ask them how they had therapy or counseling before. If not, just kind of what to expect. I usually say something like, this is a space where you get to talk about any issues or things that are bothering you, and we get to work together as a team to kind of collaborate and to find effective ways for you to help deal with that. Like, what do you typically say to people? Or do you do more kiddos, right?
Yeah, I work with kiddos, so usually I get referrals, and I already know why they're there for. But I do like to ask them. Kind of curious why you think you're here. And I use a lot of games, so we'll play a game to build rapport. And depending on the age, some kiddos can clearly tell me they know why they're there, and some kiddos don't, and that's okay. But we'll use play.
And also some adults.
Yeah.
You would think someone who sought me out and scheduled time with me would know really what they want, but I think it's this part.
Right.
What am I supposed to say? And I just kind of ask, like, what do you want to get out of therapy?
Right.
All the time we're spending together, what do you want this time to be?
And I think it takes time too. I can, like, the other perspective is when I was sitting on the other side of the chair, it is nerve-wracking, and you think you need to pour like your entire story in one session, and that doesn't have to go that way. It's whatever you feel comfortable. So I have several experiences where I'm like, ooh, what do I tell this person? I don't feel that connection yet. Yeah. And so I'll first get to know the therapist, and if I feel comfortable, then I think I'm ready to share.
I think that's a really good point, because you have to be able to be vulnerable to let this perfect stranger into parts of you that you don't like, or that you aren't happy with. And I think that I've had clients that are just very quiet, and it's almost like, okay, say something. They're just giving me yes or no answers, and I'm like, okay, so you talk for a bit. But then I also had one client who really just needed me to be quiet, and he wanted to just talk and to vent and to tell his story. For him, that was helpful. And the feedback at the end of our time together was that he hadn't had that before. He had therapists that were much more directive, and every time he wanted to talk and just go, they would kind of interrupt. So my practice with him was, I knew he was going to talk a lot. I check in, how are you doing, how have things been, and I would just let him go, and I'm writing things down so I don't forget. And then when I felt like his motor was almost slowing down, then I go back and say, okay, you said this. Can you tell me more about that? Or can we talk about this? Yeah. And for him, that kind of drove the session.
Yeah.
So we had a guided way to talk about different things. And so, yeah.
And it's okay to like let your therapist know, I don't know how this works. I don't know what to say. I don't know where to start. And then the therapist can kind of guide you.
I agree.
And then they'll let them know, this is kind of how I work. What are your thoughts? And knowing that it takes time.
And I think it's important to have a good fit.
Yes.
So I think that people need to realize that when they seek therapists out, it's not going to hurt our feelings.
Right.
If it's not a good fit, because we probably sense it too. Right. But you absolutely have the right to find someone who you feel like you can connect to, because that's the piece that drives therapy. That's the piece that makes it go well, I think.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, this is fun.
I think so too. Let's see if we can get to question number 2. Are you going to blame my mother? I will let you take first stab at this one. That's hilarious.
That is funny. Well, I think it's different for me because, I do work with kiddos and I do work with their families, and we do know that it's not just about moms. It's a whole dynamic, right? Family dynamic. Sometimes it's generational. Sometimes it is about moms, right? And sometimes it's not, and that's okay.
I always wanted to know, who started this talk about. It probably was that dang Freud. So tell me about your mother,
right?
And I think the other part of that is it's never about blame.
Right.
So we don't look at your story or anything you've gone through. Yes, you might have had a traumatic relationship with your mother. But our job is not to blame the mom. It's to look at, you've been hurt. How can we start the healing, right? So what does healing look like for you? Exactly. Sometimes that comes through forgiveness, because you have to be able to let that go before you can move forward. Blaming mom is not really going to be, I don't think, that productive in that. Or blaming anyone for that matter.
Yeah. And, for some people, it'll take maybe 6 months. For some people, it takes several years. And that's okay.
Yeah. You heal at your pace. At your pace. Gosh.
Exactly.
The next question. Can I tell you if you have salad in your teeth? Please do.
Please do. Please tell me.
I absolutely want to know if I have green things in my teeth.
How funny.
We'll probably both laugh and get a little chuckle out of it, but
Well, I work with kids, and let me tell you, kids are honest. Kids
totally
have told me things. I'm like, thank you for your honesty.
I was laughing the other day because I was thinking back on a talk I did in the classroom. And I was sharing with the kids what it was like, growing up, because I'm a product of this. I was born in the 70s, so really came into young adulthood around the 90s. And as those of my listeners who are in my age range that was before the internet. So I happened to mention that. And the Q&A at the end, one of the kids asked me, since you were around before technology, what? I am not older than technology. There's always been technology. There's just different parts. But yes, kids are extremely honest. It was just it was funny and humbling at the same time.
That is funny. Oh my goodness.
So our next question is, what if I lie to you?
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Well, I can tell you this, our job is we're not detectives, right? We're not there to,
or psychics,
or I think we all develop coping skills to protect ourselves, and sometimes a lie is a coping skill, and so, if that happens, we can address it, we can help kind of tease it out, was there, how did that serve you? How did that lie serve you? What was the need for you to lie? Let's unpack that.
Yeah, I think and that's a very good point. I've had it come up in couples where it's not so much somebody admitting that I lied, but it's, it's come about that, and he lied about this or she lied about that. And sometimes it's looking at, okay, so what are reasons people lie? Yeah. I think sometimes people lie because they're afraid. It's usually a fear-based thing, right?
Yeah.
When you're younger, it's I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble. And I think sometimes it can be that with your spouse too. Yeah. You don't want to cause them to be disappointed or angry with you. And I think sometimes it just doesn't feel safe to tell the truth because of the result. If your anger style is a tornado and I'm much quieter, I'm going to be consumed. That's that fear. So I'm going to lie and cover and protect myself.
Exactly.
I think too, it has to look at, I think we have to look at, why are you lying to me? So I may not know that you're lying to me.
Right.
I may not catch it because again, like you said, we're not detectives and we're not psychics. So you're very right. What is it serving you to lie? Are you lying to me because there's something you don't want to talk about? There's something you don't want to deal with? Because when you're lying to your therapist, it's different than lying to your mom or to your spouse, right? The only reason I can think of right now that I would ever lie to a therapist is maybe it's something I'm not ready to talk about. Yeah. Maybe I'm just not ready to go there yet. So I think like Jenna says, it's not the end of the world. It's not like we're going to kick you out of the therapist seat and you never get to come back. Right. We're all a work in progress. And so I think we have to come from that perspective. Yeah.
Good question.
Oh my gosh. Am I boring you? I laugh at that because I think we as therapists have to be really careful when we plan our sessions. Yeah. I think back to a session where I had a really big lunch and I had this quiet kiddo that just was not very talkative and we're coloring in a hot room. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm yawning and I'm trying to engage the kiddo and talk. But I was talking to myself because this kid would not talk back to me. I'm ashamed to admit that, I did catch my head drop a time or two. And I'm like, oh my God, this poor kid probably thinks, oh, I'm boring this lady. I promise you, you're not, though. Sometimes we get tired. And sometimes we've had sessions that are back to back to back to back. Right. And you're sitting for 3, 4, 5 hours with little 10-minute breaks in between. Right. And so sometimes I think it's more a function of we just need to get up and move. Yeah. But we don't want to be distracting from you or to give you the feeling that, oh, you're not important for me. You're not important enough for me to sit and listen. I don't know. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. And then I think you bring up another good point. Like, I won't intentionally, meet with clients early in the morning because I'm not a morning person. Same. And if I am dealing, because I work with kiddos with our little ones, it's usually a crisis, so that naturally wakes me up. Right. Usually I'll schedule when I know that I'm fully awake.
I think it's less a function of boring. Okay, I like this. This is fun. So our next question is, can't we resolve my issues faster? That's a good one, and I think you spoke to that earlier, that sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. I think with therapy, it's just very messy. You have to, and I think it goes faster when you're willing to do the hard work. So if you're just going to show up and think I have a magic wand and I'm going to fix everything, it's going to go a lot slower because I can't fix anything but me. I think when you have people who are able to be, and they're ready and able to be self-reflective and to think on their own, actions, thoughts, feelings, and then really do the work of, okay, we talked about this in therapy. Did I practice it between sessions, right? Sometimes I'll give clients homework to work on or to focus on until the next time we meet. And a lot of times, and I know life gets busy, but those things that your therapist gives you to do in between time are going to be the things that help you to get a little bit quicker, better. Oh my gosh, get a little better, a little quicker. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it really depends. Sometimes, I think I've heard this once, and I do believe this. Sometimes the hurt is so deep, it's very rooted, kind of like what we said earlier, from generation to generation. Yes. So, I've even heard that sometimes it takes 3 generations to heal, like trauma, for example. So just by saying that, knowing that there's one small moment that you experience with you invite joy or peace or calmness or even self-compassion to yourself in your healing journey, then I would say that's progress. And I think it depends on what you define as resolving. What does that mean to you? What do you mean by that? What does that look like?
I agree. Yeah.
And so, like I mentioned, for some people it may be fast, and that's fine. That's their journey. For some people, it may be a lifelong journey, and that is okay too.
Exactly. And I think it depends on what you want to work on.
Exactly.
And how long you want to work on it. Because you don't have to be in therapy for years or forever. When you feel like you've met the goals of this therapy, so for instance, if you're dealing with trauma, childhood-born trauma, that's something that's going to be a scar that's always with you.
Right.
You get to choose whether you're okay with just healing that top layer, or if you want to continue to work on the healing that goes beneath the skin. And I think that it's okay either way. Like Janet's saying, it doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with therapy forever. I don't ever have to come back. Which actually is a good segue to the next question, which asks, can we ever really resolve my issues? And I think that is a very complicated question. I think that we're humans and we're always going to have issues of some sort. And so I think sometimes as you work on the issues that you've identified to work on therapy, because when you first start, you do choose to identify what you want to work on. Once you feel like you have met those therapeutic goals, you've addressed those things to your satisfaction, other things sometimes come up in the midst of it. And so then at that point you look at, are there other things I want to work on right now? And you might be fine. You might have other things that come up that you feel totally okay and capable with, that you could deal with those things later. So I don't know. How would you answer that question?
I think you answered it. You did a really good job.
Hey, I'm a broken clock right twice a day, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I'll let you take first stab at the next one. It says, why can't I ask about your personal life?
Oh, that's a great question. I want to we can look at it this way, right? If you're going to be paying, let's say, a certain amount of money, I mean, do you want to hear about my life?
Right.
But that's also a great question, because I think for us as therapists, one of the things that we do kind of look into is how much to share. So we want to be very intentional of like what we're sharing. We want to make sure that what we're sharing is supporting the healing, the growth.
Exactly.
And also, we also want you guys to know, like, we're humans. We deal with stuff too. And I think for me, at least, when I was on, again, the other side of the chair, knowing that my therapist also struggled with things, it's like, okay, it feels kind of like this validation.
It can be validating, yes.
Like, oh, great, I'm not the only therapist that struggles with this.
I agree. But now you don't want your therapist to just be sitting there telling you about their whole soap opera of a life,
right?
While the clock is ticking, and you're gonna pay this person like what, $135, $120, $100, over $100 to just, and you're like, well, we didn't talk about my stuff, right?
Exactly.
So. I think, and I think it depends on the therapist training too, because you have some therapists who absolutely will not disclose. That's how they were trained. They don't think it's appropriate. But I very much agree with Janet that it depends on what's the purpose it's going to serve. So if I'm sharing something with you from my personal life, it had better be to validate you, to support you, to share something that you're going to benefit from, and not just to vent, or I shouldn't be the one benefiting from it. It has to be the client. So I hope that answers that question.
Exactly.
Oh, this next question is fun. What if I'm attracted to you?
I'm laughing because I work with little ones,
They might have little crushes on you.
Well, I think that's also something that, like, if you are attracted to your therapist, point that out. Point that out, and then I think, as
embarrassing as it might be.
Yeah, if you feel comfortable, because and always ask yourself, did I benefit from this session, or is this helping me out?
I think of the whole what is that? The Nightingale, Florence Nightingale syndrome, where you really, people who help you and people who take care of you are very nurturing.
Yeah.
You can tend to have some feelings that transfer over into them, and you might mistake them for feelings of love, or feelings of romance, romantic feelings, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that, if they do bring that to light, it can be uncomfortable, but I think that it can also be addressed. But just know that it's not uncommon. It's something that can happen.
Exactly.
Also, to know, though, that your therapist needs to have strong enough boundaries that they do not cross that.
Yes.
We know, or all therapists should know, what is it? Therapy never includes sex.
Never.
That is drilled into us as we're trained.
That's right.
you know, there may be things about you that brings up something in a therapist. Maybe you remind them of something, but they are to see about that in their own therapy or their own consultation and to deal with it. That is not your responsibility to have to deal with.
Exactly.
So, I like the next question too. It's funny. Do you think about me between sessions? It's funny because I actually do think about my clients. And it's just because, like, Will be listening to something or reading something and it'll remind me of an issue that we're dealing with. And so for me, it's like, oh, well, this is, you know, okay, this will be good for that. Or, oh, you know what, I'm dealing with this right now with a client. Let me learn more. And so I think it's from the perspective of let me learn more. Yeah. It's not that I'm sitting there fantasizing about you or that I don't have a life and I just think about clients all day long.
We have a life.
We do. We have families and we have other things we like to do, other interests.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think at least when I'm like reading books, when I'm doing my research and things like that, training, I do think about like, oh, this might benefit, or this might help, or this might, you know, be useful with, you know, this person or this person. And I think, and also, I think one of the things too is kind of, as therapists, kind of being aware how much time are we spending thinking.
Yes.
Because that's part of our practice as well, as taking care of ourselves, so we can be well and be well in session. Yeah. So if it's something that's very constant, it may be I'm thinking about it maybe a lot. I would probably bring that up even to my therapist, you know,
something to process.
Something
what is this about,
process,
right?
Yeah, because you know, we do hear these stories, right, of experiences and that could have been traumatic and harmful. And so we are humans and we do care and we want to make sure that we are well.
Yes.
And so we need that time and space to honor that, acknowledge that, and do our own practices to learn to know that your stories are not our stories,
right.
And we can gently let that go, and then continue to support in the best way that we can.
Very well put. I think it's about finding that balance of being interested and you know, in research mode versus just carrying on somebody's trauma,
right?
And just you know, kind of dragging it along with you instead of being able to say, hey, you know what, I need to separate this from me, and I need to find peace with it. And so, but that actually goes really good with the next question, which is, do you care about me? Of course we do. I mean, I feel like we would not do what we do if we didn't care about people,
right?
And I think you kind of build a connection. That's the key. Right. That's the key of therapy, is building that connection. And I don't think that you can have that connection with somebody and then not care.
Right.
I think they just kind of come together.
Exactly. No, I would say so. I care a lot, tremendously, a lot about my kiddos that I work with. They're amazing. They're awesome. I learn so much from them. I do care a lot, and I always wish them well. And so we care.
Yes, we really do. Now, I will say this though, I just want to just make it really clear that even though your therapist does care about you, we cannot cross into the realm of being a friend.
Exactly.
So a therapist and a friend is completely different. You don't pay your friends. We help, you know. Right. We're friendly. We're somebody that you should feel comfortable with and a connection to, but we really need to be careful and clear that we cannot maintain friendships and still be able to be the neutral canvas for you to kind of reflect off of and to glean from. So.
Very well put.
So those were fun questions. I want to thank my friend, my sister, Miss Janet Ruiz, for joining me today and for having fun with me today. This has been an awesome episode. Until next time, folks, you know, this is just Tamika, and we'll be seeing you.
Take care.